Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I'm also an earth girl. I'm also a person living in this complicated world that we are in. And so this podcast is an unlikely mashup of two of my favorite forms of self-care, connecting with the angels and also listening to sleep podcasts, which I do just about every night before I go to sleep or as I'm going to sleep. And so, if you're wondering what an angelic practitioner does, well, I have the best job ever. I'm in my 19th year, which is amazing, of doing this work full time. I offer one-on-one angel sessions, they're just beautiful and provide you with an opportunity to deepen in your divine guidance. It's not just about me giving you answers, because that's not what I do. Rather, we co-create a beautiful sanctuary where it's easier for you to connect with your guidance and your truth. And I might mirror some guidance and wisdom and encouragement for you, and you'll know whether or not it's for you, because there is a tuning fork within you that helps you connect. And the angels love to remind us that when we hear our truth, we know our truth. And there's something so powerful when we are connected with our deepest knowing. So angel sessions are just beautiful, and they're 1 hour and take place over the phone. If you're ever interested in scheduling one, just reach out. Usually I can get you in within a few days. I'm not one of these practitioners that books out months in advance. Truth is, that would stress me out. So I typically just book myself about a week out. And I don't deal with such a large volume that it's hard to see me. And also what I do is I offer a variety of classes that will inspire your spirit. I offer something new about every 6 or 8 weeks or so. And I do everything from a business mentoring group for other soul-inspired practitioners to classes that help you connect with your intuitive gifts and also your creative spirit. And all of this and more you can find at my website, illuminatingSouls.com, where you can also sign up for my mailing list. And then you'll be in the know of what I've got going on. And I also post regularly to Facebook. So lots of ways we can connect. But for now, we are here. When I say we, I mean myself and the angels are here to create a beautiful, sweet space where you can replenish and receive love and encouragement. So this podcast was born as a sleep podcast because I have been listening to them regularly, I don't know, for a long time, 6 or 8 years, I think. I think I started listening to them in 2015. I don't know that I was listening to them regularly, but I think I first indulged in my inaugural experience of a sleep podcast in 2015. I was at a sleepaway camp called Soul Camp, where I was a facilitator, and I was having trouble sleeping, and I knew about a sleep podcast called Sleep With Me by Andrew Ackerman, and so I started listening to an episode, and it really helped me drift off to sleep, because what I found, and almost what I connected with along the timeline of my life, is that very sweet experience of drifting off to sleep while there is sort of a quiet, soothing voice murmuring kind of off in the distance because I have a really positive association with that. Because growing up, my sister and I, we had our bedroom on the second floor, and so often as we were put to bed, our parents would be downstairs and they would be listening to the television, watching TV, or talking to each other, and there would be this beautiful sense of safety and comfort hearing the sound of the TV or their voices downstairs as I was drifting off to sleep. As an adult, more often than not, I would fall asleep with the television on. So again, I have a long history with falling asleep with some ambiguous noise in the background. And I found sleep podcasts to just be the most wonderful thing. And there's a lot of them I listen to now. I listen to Night Falls and Sleepy and Get Sleepy. And one that isn't meant to be a sleep podcast, and it's the one that I usually use at 3 a.m. if I've woken up and I can't go back to sleep. It's called the History of English podcast, and it's not that it's boring. Like, I'm not recommending it as a sleep podcast because it's boring. It's actually fascinating about the development of the English language, and the gentleman who produces it. Each episode is so wonderfully researched, and he makes it compelling. But there's something about the timbre of his voice and the density of the material that if I'm awake at 3 a.m., it gives my waking mind something to focus on that isn't going to get my mind rambling. You know, if I'm listening to a different kind of podcast that I actually want to pay attention to, my mind starts doing gymnastics, right? Because we start engaging with the content. And for some reason, this particular podcast, it's fascinating, and it gives me the bridge that I need to fall back asleep. So it's fascinating, a fascinating podcast. I highly recommend it. So a few years ago, I decided to add my voice to the inventory of voices that are helping people fall asleep. And also what I have discovered through you, our beautiful listeners, is that many of you listen during the daytime. And the stories I tell and the episodes I craft support you as you go on your walk or go about your day. So whenever you are guided to listen, I welcome you here. And I am grateful for an opportunity to love and support you and keep you company for the next hour or so. So each episode runs about an hour, and that's on purpose because as a listener of sleep podcasts, my preference is episodes that run about an hour because it gives me plenty of time to drift off. So typically how an episode is set up here is the first 20 minutes or so, 15 to 20 minutes, I ramble like I'm doing now, and hopefully I bring forward something that might inspire you, and I bring in the angels. And then we move into Storytime. And Storytime runs about 40 minutes, and it can be anything from stories in my life, or we'll flip through an old TV guide, or something that's been in the public domain for a long time, or community cookbooks. In this episode, this is going to be a TV guide episode. And I know for many of you, these are your favorite episodes, and I've got a really, really good TV guide for us to flip through. So I'm looking forward to story time with you. But for now, we are in this part where I ramble, and hopefully I inspire you a little bit. And I bring in the angels who are already here. And I love sharing the angels with you because as I call them in, I also receive their love. And I've come to rely upon their love. Feels like the world right now has a lot of sharp edges. And it feels a bit more challenging to stay centered because of everything that is happening, and you don't need me to tell you what is happening. You already know. You're a smart cookie. I don't know why I just said that. You're a smart person. Sorry, I think I'm a little punchy. I did not realize that until I told you were a smart cookie. Apparently, I am punchy. It is early morning here. The sun is already up, and I have made the executive decision to record this in my pajamas. And I don't know why you need to know that, other than, for some reason, the episodes that I record while I'm still in my pajamas always feel more cozy to me versus if I'm up and showered and already dressed. I don't know, it just has a different vibe. So it's like we're having a pajama party right now. You know, we're underneath the blanket fort together. So we're whispering and telling each other our stories and probably eating some kind of, cookies or chips or something, slumber party style, blanket fort style. And so I invite you into the blanket fort with me. And you get cozy on up and snuggle on in whatever way works best for you. I'm a lots of blankets and lots of pillows sleeper. I love crawling into bed at the end of the day. I have really good associations with sleep time, so I'm fortunate in that. And so I love that feeling of getting a little tired and knowing that it's time for bed. And I usually go to bed before my husband. He stays up later than I. He's not much of a sleeper. He's been like that his whole life. And so typically I will go to sleep before him. And on the nights that he gets in bed before me, it feels like the earth has turned on its axis. I don't even know what to do. It feels like there has been a rip in the continuum of life. So just a little bit of insight into my sleep cycle. A lot of times I wake up at 3 a.m. and that's when I turn on another podcast like the History of English, because I figure if I don't go to sleep, at least I'm really entertained and educated. The History of English is fascinating. If you're looking for a really good place to start, because there's a lot of episodes, he has 3 episodes from a few years ago called The Great Vowel Shift. Fascinating stuff. Highly recommend it. And then we're going to go just in the other direction with our story time with a TV guide. So he's teaching us about the history of English. And I'm going to talk to you about 1978 television. We all have our roles in this world, right? I have surrendered to mine. So for now, let's spend a few minutes with the angels, our beautiful angels who love us so. So I'm going to invite them in to join us. So let's just take a few deep breaths in and out as we gently call ourselves forward into the heart of God. And beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here. And I ask that you infuse this broadcast with waves of love in service to each of our beloveds listening to this broadcast. I ask that you bring in waves of healing, upliftment, inspiration, and light, helping us remember who we are as divine beings, having human experiences. Angels, I ask that you help lift us up above the noise so that we can see through the eyes of love. I ask that you help lift any burdens, any heaviness we're carrying, especially that which does not belong to us, clearing our energy field through the heart of God. And dear ones, just imagine, if you will, that the room that you are in, the space you are in, is being filled with a soft pink light, filled with love that has been calibrated just for you. That your angels are aware of your journey. They know what is transpiring, and they know what is in your heart. And so they are bringing you this love that has been calibrated for what you are moving through in this moment. No matter when you listen to this broadcast, this love will join you in live time. And so just breathe and know that the love is flowing to you. And if you have any prayers and intentions you wish to share with the angels, I invite you to bring them into your heart, knowing that they are receiving you with love. You are so very precious in this world. You are a blessing of love and of goodness and of kindness and light. So just breathe and let the love find you where you are. And I don't know about you, but I am craving so much of this light right now. I don't have a lot of energy to do in the world. I have just enough energy to be. And so coming into these intentional energy fields that are being cultivated to receive love is so supportive. As I record this, it is the end of May of 2024, and we are just entering our growing season here in Northern California. So my husband loves to garden, and he loves to grow tomatoes. And he loves to grow tomatoes mostly because I love tomatoes, and he's that kind of person who grows the things that I love. I'm so lucky. And so every night he goes out and he tends to the tomatoes and he waters them and he nurtures them. And so in this metaphor, we are the tomato plants being nurtured and watered and tended to as we continue to grow and blossom and come into the next phase of our experiences, just as our tomato plants are starting to blossom and grow taller and stronger, and they are responding to the light, the sunlight and the water and the nutrients that are flowing to them. And I affirm the same is happening for you and for me too. That we are ever evolving beings, and we are being nurtured and loved in the exact right ways that we need right now. So just breathe. Say hi to your angels. Hi, angels. Hi, everybody. Hi, angels. So glad you're here. And then hear them saying hello to you back. So much love is flowing through for you right now. And I'm so grateful that I get to share it with you. So my beautiful one, you just bathe in the love. You just bathe in this moment filled with light for you, filled with prayers for you. And you go ahead and rest. And while you rest, we're going to move on into story time, because I'm really looking forward to this story time with you. So as I already promised you, this is going to be a TV guide episode, because I'm a TV baby. I grew up watching television. It is part of the vernacular of my life. I don't watch as much TV as I used to. I think my attention span has been eroded, probably from watching too many TikToks. I don't know how good that is for my attention span, but I used to watch so much television, especially as a kid. TV was this window of escape, of entertainment, of connection, of intimacy, which sounds strange, but a lot of these characters would become part of our extended experience of the world. So this particular episode is from September 23rd to the 29th, 1978. To set the stage, I am 16 years old I was like a 16-year-old who knew everything about the world. I think I must have been a very hard 16-year-old to parent, because I wasn't having a very easy time being 16 years old. I'd just probably gotten my driver's license, and my parents would let me take the car, which is amazing. I had great parents, by the way. And I bought this TV guide off of eBay recently because I saw the cover and I knew at once this would be something we could all relate to. So I'm going to give you a little preview on who is on the cover by sharing with you the words to the theme song, which you're going to recognize, I would imagine. I'm not going to sing it because I think my singing could be disruptive to your potential sleep. So it's going to be like spoken word, right? Like a poetry slam. I'm just going to start with the first sentence of the lyrics. Is it a sentence? The first stanza of the song. It starts, "Who can turn the world on with her smile?" Do you know what it is yet? Who can turn the world on with her smile? Who can take a nothing day and suddenly make it all seem worthwhile? Well, it's you, girl. It's you, girl. And you should know it. With each glance and every little movement, you show it. Love is all around, no need to waste it. You can have the town, why don't you take it? You're going to make it after all. Isn't that a beautiful message? And do you know who's on the cover yet? Mary Tyler Moore. Of course it's Mary Tyler Moore. And the thing that I have not done yet is flip through this TV guide, but I realized this morning as I was getting ready to record this episode that this is actually dated after her sitcom went off the air. So this must be an article about life after the Mary Tyler Moore Show, because Mary Tyler Moore Show ran from September 1970 to March 1977. I looked that up. Just don't be too impressed that I actually knew that. I'm not that much of a television geek. So this is coming out about 18 months after her sitcom ended. And something I didn't know until I looked it up was the season 1 of the Mary Tyler Moore Show had different lyrics, which will sound familiar to you, probably. How will you make it on your own? This world is awfully big, girl, and this time you're all alone. Isn't that kind of dismal? Like, I didn't know it was that dark, the theme song. But then, right, they're going to perk her up. But it's time you started living. It's time you let someone else do the giving. And then it goes back to love is all around, no need to waste it. You can have the town, why don't you take it? You might just make it after all. So season 1 is like, how are you going to make it on your own? The world is big and you're all alone and you might just make it. Like, okay, maybe you will. I don't know. It's a big world. You're all alone. Like, what a terrible message. So, of course, they changed it in the second season. So, you're turning the world on with your smile. You're taking a nothing day and suddenly making it seem worthwhile. Well, it's you, girl. And you should know it. You're going to make it after all. So, they go from kind of, wah wah, season 1 theme song to season 2 and throughout the rest of the show, the series, of a much more uplifting message. Isn't that interesting? I didn't know that. I seem to recall there were different lyrics, but I didn't read them out loud until this morning. And I thought, oh, well, that was not an encouraging theme song. The world's a big place and you're all alone. And you might make it. I don't know. Maybe you will. But throw your hat up in the street and maybe you'll catch it and there won't be a car whizzing by. So, yay for season 2 of the Mary Tyler Moore theme song. All right, so as we're flipping through the first pages of this TV guide, there is an article about the FCC and Congress and the regulations for television broadcast networks, which is interesting but kind of boring, so I'm not going to read that to you. And instead, we're going to go to an ad for RCA Selectivision, because in 1978, VCRs were starting to be introduced to the market. And if for some reason you're a youngin, listen, like Beverly Hillbillies, if you're a young person listening to this, you might not even know what a VCR is. It's the initials stand for video cassette recorder, because in the olden days, well, first off, in the real olden days, you couldn't even record television, and you couldn't play it when you wanted to. You couldn't just watch a television show that you wanted to watch through Wi-Fi. You had to watch what was on the networks. And then this amazing invention called the VCR came out, and you could actually record a show on a physical tape. It was revolutionary. I don't think we got our first VCR in our family until the mid 1980s, maybe 1982 or so, or something. I only know this because I was a giant General Hospital fan, and I would not take a 2 o'clock class in college because I had to watch General Hospital. That may have just cosmically shifted the course of my life, because maybe, I don't know, maybe I missed out of a class or a teacher that would have changed my life if only I was not so committed to General Hospital. But that's amusing for another day. So here's the ad for the Selectivision. RCA announces the Selectivision Film Festival offer. Buy a Selectivision video cassette recorder now at participating dealers and get 2 movies free. You're invited to go to the movies at your house. I mean, that was pretty freaking awesome at the time, with Selectivision, the 4-hour video cassette recorder from RCA. So you could pick from the movies MASH, which would have been the movie, not the television show, The French Connection, Blue Hawaii, The Hot Rock, Fantastic Voyage, Ombre, Bus Stop, and dozens more. Or you can get the Ali Spinks fight. So that would be Muhammad Ali and Michael Spinks, right? So, movies in a VCR. I mean, that was phenomenal. Total game changer. And then there is an article about John Wayne called The Duke is Back. And just so you know, John Wayne is in active rotation on our television set because my husband loves Westerns. And typically I try to find television shows that my husband enjoys because he works a muggle job during the week, and I want him to have his escapism in whatever way helps him when he is home. So that might involve British mysteries. We are watching Midsummer Murders right now. A little vacation tip: never go to Midsummer. There's 22 seasons of, crimes happening there, so not a good place to vacation. But he loves that show, so we're watching it. And he also loves his Westerns. He's a cute guy. I love my husband. So anyways, John Wayne reminds me of my husband, not because he's like John Wayne, but because he enjoys John Wayne movies. There's also an ad for Geritol. I totally had forgotten about Geritol until I saw the ad. Do you guys remember it? It was vitamins for old people. So it would always be a joke that, it's the Geritol sect. It's the Geritol population, which meant it was all the old people. I don't even know what it was. So Geritol is America's #1 iron and vitamin tonic. So It's a high-potency iron and vitamin tonic with iron, thiamine, riboflavin. I don't know. The fonts are getting very small, so I'm not going to read the rest, but a little flashback of remembering Geritol, which doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. Then there's an ad for the Photomat stores. Again, completely forgot about Photomat. So Photomat was a chain of photo development stores back in the day when we had to develop our film, and they were also known for selling video cassettes. So this is an ad. It said video cassettes for prices as low as these from stores as close as Photomats. Wouldn't that be a blessing? So a beta tape, a 30 to 60 minute tape, was $10.95. A VHS, 60 to 120 minutes, was $14.95. A 60 to 120 minute beta was $14.95. And a 120, 240 minute VHS was $20.95. It says, "Rejoice, all you with home video tape recorders. Now the same convenience little Photomat store that revolutionized picture taking is doing it to videotaping. For starters, think of us as major brand blank cassettes." Well, I'm not going to look it up, but I can only imagine, with adjusting the rates for inflation, $20.95 for a single VHS blank tape was a lot of money in 1978. I mean, it's a lot of money now. I mean, I can only imagine how expensive it was then. It was definitely a time for the early adopters who had discretionary income, disposable income to spend on their electronics. But it was the start of a revolution that would change the way we consumed our television. Just as an aside, we were a Betamax family because I had read somewhere that it was a superior picture quality, but Beta would lose the war to VHS. So we start off with Saturday morning television. I don't know why I'm sharing this with you. The very first show at 6 a.m. has a title called Man Builds and Man Destroys. Wow, like that's a powerful title for a Saturday morning. The subject matter is efforts to preserve such examples of cultural heritage as its historic sites and established neighborhoods are reviewed in this program. And then, of course, Saturday morning is all about the cartoons. Now, at 16 years old, I was not a cartoon watcher any longer, but when I was younger, I was sad because I had to go to Sabbath school, which was a Jewish school, on Saturdays, because we would also go to Sabbath services. And it was a major bone of contention with my mother that she made me go because I wanted to watch cartoons because, I had my priorities straight back then. So after all of the cartoons like Bugs Bunny and Scooby-Doo, now I'm sleeping. I am sure if I am 16 years old, I am asleep until 11 or 12, at which point my parents would probably knock on my door and come into my room and say, "Are you alive?" Like, are you going to wake up? The mystery of the teenage sleeping cycle. Again, if I'm 16 years old and it's September, I now have my own room because for my 16th birthday, my father built out our back porch into this little room for me. So I didn't have to share a room with my sister anymore. So I had my own room. And so I'm sure I was sleeping. And then on Saturday, during the daytime, it was all about sports, which was horrible. It was a wasteland as far as I was concerned about anything to watch on television. College football, not going to watch it. And again, if I'm 16 years old and it is September on a Saturday, I can pretty much guarantee you I'm with my girlfriends. And we are either at somebody's house, we're at a restaurant, or we're at a shopping mall, because basically at 16 years old, that's all you do. That's all we did. Maybe you did actually cool things with your life. We were eating, playing guitars. I didn't really play, my girlfriends did. Going to malls. Like that was a whole thing, a whole day. So I'm sure I was not home for television. But let's shift over into prime time Saturday night. Again, I don't know if I would have been home. Maybe I would be at the movies with my girlfriends. At 16 years old, I was very friend-centric. But still, I've watched these shows. So at 8 o'clock, Rhoda is on. In this 5th season opener, Rhoda and Brenda have a surprise for their father's birthday. But the surprise is theirs when they learned he walked out on Ida, their mother, played brilliantly by Nancy Walker. If you don't want to watch Rhoda, you can watch Chips, right? John and Ponch, the CHP cops. Always a good episode. A show that I don't recall called Carter Country with Victor French and Kenny Holiday. You can also watch Great Performances, which has the Pennsylvania Ballet performing a Balanchine Ballet Concerto Barocco, I think is how you pronounce it, which I never in a million years would have watched. But later on, when Mikhail Baryshnikov became a thing, I became obsessed with ballet because Mikhail Baryshnikov, right? Of course. Good Times is on, which I used to watch with Jimmy J.J. Walker. They have trouble with the loan shark he borrowed from to stage Thelma's elaborate wedding. He just lost his job. That sounds like a very J.J. thing to do. And then there's a show that I don't remember called Apple Pie that is debuting. What's interesting is it has Dabney Coleman and Rue McClanahan starring. Well, I just think that's interesting. And if it's Saturday night, it's Love Boat time. Love exciting and new. Come aboard. We're expecting you. Right? Theme song from The Love Boat. Seared into my brain forever. Julie's parents, played by Betty Garrett and Norman Fell, drop a bombshell on the cruise. They're getting a divorce. There's a lot of that going on in this Saturday night. First, Rhoda's parents. Well, they're not getting a divorce. Her dad just walked out. And then Julie's parents, played by Betty Garrett and Norman Fell. Okay, the next story arc on Love Boat for this evening is a pair of spirited adolescents, played by Melissa Gilbert and Jimmy Baio, Scott Baio's brother, discover puppy love. Oh. And then the third story arc is two self-righteous prudes, played by Dodie Goodman and James Coco, fall in love. I was always up for an episode of The Love Boat. And then on Saturday night at 10 o'clock, you're going to choose between Dallas or Fantasy Island. Now, by this point, we are all watching Dallas. Dallas has become a cultural phenomenon. And this is a rerun. Oh, it's the return. I'm sorry. It's the season premiere. Ooh, that's a big difference. Rerun versus return. So it's the return of Dallas, the season premiere. The feud between the Ewing and the Barnes clan continues into a second season as black sheep Gary Ewing returns to the fold, but to a hardly unanimous welcome. First of two parts, of course, with Patrick Duffy, Barbara Bel Geddes, Jim Davis, Linda Gray, and Larry Hagman. Introducing David Aykroyd as Gary Ewing and Joan Van Ark as Val. If you do want to watch Fantasy Island, though, the story arcs include a New York pickpocket and his partner in crime masquerade as a minister and his daughter. A man who hopes to keep his ex-wife from remarrying poses as a swashbuckling pirate. And I'm sorry, I think that's funny. And literally sweeps the bride-to-be off her feet. Okay, well, I would not be watching that. Oh my gosh. This episode has Sonny Bono Diana Canova, and then 2 actors I don't know. Okay, probably, I'm sure I would have been watching Dallas, for sure. And then late at night, let's see, is Saturday Night Live on at this point? I'm looking for it. Oh, here it is. Richard Dreyfuss hosts, and so Richard Dreyfuss meets the Coneheads in a takeoff on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Well, I'm sure that's funny. That was funny at the time. And let's see. On Don Kirshner's rock concert, Cheryl Ladd is a performer. Jethro Tull, Confunction. Okay. I would never stay up that late for that. And then there's different movies. There's Girl Crazy with Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland on at 4:30 in the morning, which I never would have been watching. So that kind of completes out our Saturday. Sunday morning, there's always a lot of religious programming, a lot of kind of docudramas, things, a couple of cartoons, but it's not a prime cartoon time. Saturday is really when the good stuff airs, and movies and things like that. But I'm not finding anything compelling to share with you about. So it looks like at 5 o'clock there is going to be a performance with Vladimir Horowitz, who was a pianist. So my parents would have wanted to watch that for sure. So Vladimir Horowitz performs Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto as Zubin Mehta leads the New York Philharmonic in this live concert from New York's Lincoln Center. My parents loved classical music. They loved listening to philharmonics and symphonies and things like that, so I'm sure they would have wanted to watch that. There's an ad for something called Advent's Video Beam Television, life-size television. It looks like it's about a 40-inch TV, which really would have been revolutionary for the time. I don't remember anything about it or the technology. I'm sure it cost as much as a car, though. I mean, I don't know that for sure. I just mean, I would imagine this is a very costly piece of technology. And then there are 2 ads for programs that are going to be on Sunday night. One is Lassie, the all-new Lassie. And then this is why Mary Tyler Moore is on the cover. It's called Mary. It's a new show. So Mary Tyler Moore clowns, sings, dances, and lets loose with an outrageous troupe of inspired comics. An irresistible hour of entertainment starring Mary Tyler Moore with Jim Hampton, Judy Kahan, Michael Keaton, Swoosie Kurtz, David Letterman, and Dick Shawn. So she was doing a variety show. Oh, on the World of Disney, they're going to be showing The Shaggy DA, which is a sequel to The Shaggy Dog. So for Lassie, The New Beginnings, it's a 1978 TV movie. It's a conclusion, so there must have been a part 1 the week before, with a rescue mission, of course, as Lassie races across rugged terrain to bring home Stuart Stratton to his nephew, who has been bitten by... Okay, well, you know what? I'm not going to finish that sentence. Okay, so Lassie is rescuing somebody, is really all you need to know. But then what I find fascinating is there's a huge ad for Battlestar Galactica, a special ABC Space Spectacular. So I don't know if this is just starting, if it's already been on the air. It says, pursued by alien Cylons, Battlestar Galactica, its men struck down by a deadly plague, is defended only by a heroic squadron of women warriors! Exclamation point. And the women warriors, this is an artistic rendering, are all profoundly voluptuous in skin-tight suits, because of course they are, because there would never be an unattractive squadron of women warriors. And so, of course, this is Richard Hatch, Dirk Benedict, Lauren Green, Jane Seymour, and Maren Jensen. So, I wasn't in love with Battlestar Galactica, but I watched it because I thought Richard Hatch and Dirk Benedict were cute. I'm 16. That's what's important to me. How cute is the cast? Really depends on whether or not I'm going to watch something. So I'm not sure how long Mary Tyler Moore's variety show lasted. It says that Carl Reiner is a guest, and she introduces the first and maybe last TV performance of the Ed Asner Dancers without Ed. I have no idea what that would have been. And she sings We've Only Just Begun. Or Battlestar Galactica. Or Lawrence Welk. Or Hee Haw. What would you have watched? I'm pretty sure we're watching Mary Tyler Moore in our house because of my parents. And then also on, and we'll read about it in a minute, All in the Family and Alice on Sunday nights. Or you could watch NFL football, which would have not been the choice in our house. But in case you're wondering, it's the New England Patriots at the Oakland Raiders. We are definitely watching All in the Family in our house. So in this episode, the Bunker's 9th season begins without Gloria and Mike. I think they moved to California in the series. But Archie, of course played by Carol O'Connor, has a new gripe. The smart-mouthed daughter of Edith's cousin, Floyd, played by Marty Brill, has been dropped at his door. 9-year-old Danielle Brisbois joins the cast as Stephanie. I don't really remember that. There's also a show called Struggle for Survival. Dramatic reenactments spanning 5 million years trace the origins of man's will to survive. I for sure would not have been watching that. Alice is also on this Sunday night. Serving a third year at Mel's Diner, Alice, played by Linda Lavin, is exasperated with son Tommy, played by Philip McKeon, who is now 14. So she takes Mel up on his boast that he can raise the boy better than she. Also on is Kaz, which I seem to recall my mom enjoyed. Ron Liebman plays Kaz. He's an attorney. So I seem to recall we would watch that in our house. And then just a bunch of stuff I would not want to watch later on Sunday. And then we come to daytime Monday. So I'm in school, much to my dismay. And something you should know about me is I hated school. I really, I mean, now that I look back, I realize how I've always had a difficult time being in places that I didn't want to be. That sounds so weird, but basically I would wind up kind of manifesting stomach aches so that I didn't have to go to school. And rare was the week that I would go to school 5 days a week. I would have my mom call me out sick, much to her dismay. She would get so embarrassed having to call the front office saying I was going to be out sick again, because I found school to be overwhelming because of, I don't know, all the people and feeling like I didn't fit in and all the things that I think can be really hard about having to be in a group social environment if we're not calibrated for such a thing. I've only really had full appreciation of how hard that must have been for me now that I'm older and have better understanding of my instrument. So there would be times I would be home during the day watching television, for sure, but maybe not this day. So our choices are Hollywood Squares. I was always up for a good episode of Hollywood Squares. Do you remember who's in the center square? well, especially if you're not from this country, if you're not from the United States, you won't remember. Paul Lynde, he was always in the center square. So we've got Lonnie Anderson, Elaine Boozler, Alex Cord, George Gobel, Rich Little, Larry Linville, of course, Paul Lynde, Rosemarie, Doc Severinsen, and Peter Marshall is the host. You can also watch a lot of great syndicated television, including Love American Style, Truer Than the Red, White, and Blue. Sorry, I just in my head started singing the theme song. Hold on, I'll come back. I'm back. $20,000 Pyramid with LeVar Burton and Adrienne Barbeau with Dick Clark as the host. Ryan's Hope is on. I don't know if I'm watching Ryan's Hope at 16, but somewhere in this area of my life, I start watching Ryan's Hope, which was a soap opera on ABC. It was a half-an-hour soap opera that preceded All My Children, which was always on at noon. And I loved Ryan's Hope. I loved it. It was the first soap that I ever started watching. So, again, All My Children. And if I was watching syndicated stuff, there's Partridge Family. Always up for a good episode of the Partridge Family. In this episode, Henry Morgan plays an opportunistic motorist who turns a minor incident into a $500,000 lawsuit. Also on is Gilligan's Island. I've watched more episodes of that than I can ever imagine. In this episode, so wait, should we do the theme song? Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip. Okay, I'm really embarrassed that I remember that, but I'm also proud. Can we be both embarrassed and proud when we remember something like that? In this episode, Gilligan and the skipper, I don't have to read it. In this episode, Gilligan and the skipper have a chance to escape the island, but Gilligan messes something up and they are stuck there forever. Basically, is every episode of Gilligan's Island, right? Okay, but I'll read it for real. Okay, it says, Gilligan and the skipper set sail on a raft to get help. Well, we know exactly what happens. They don't go anywhere. Maybe a gorilla gets on the raft with them or something, or maybe they're just about to get help and Gilligan pulls a string and the raft comes apart or something. And I just realized that I missed, in the morning, Mike Douglas is on, always a good talk show, and Sammy Davis Jr. is on, which 16-year-old me wouldn't have cared. But later, in my 30s, I would have a real appreciation for Sammy Davis Jr., and I would have wanted to watch that. And then we have a bunch of syndicated programming, including MASH. I watched many an episode of MASH. In this episode, Hawkeye feigns mental illness to wrangle an R&R in Tokyo. Oh, this is the golden age of television. You know why? You know it's on? I'll be so embarrassed for all of us who watched it. The Gong Show. It was horrible. And I watched it. Not religiously, I'm just saying it's a part of the tableau of the 70s for me. So in this episode of Mike Douglas, it's from Las Vegas, and the co-host is John Davidson, joined by Sammy Davis Jr., Connie Stevens, Isabel Sanford, and comedian Myron Cohen, and a dance troupe. Or in syndication, you can watch Bob Newhart. Feeling old and unfulfilled, Carol, played by Marsha Wallace, sets out to chart a new course before her ship sinks. So this would be the first Bob Newhart when he's the therapist. Then in prime time, we're going to have an opportunity to watch WKRP in Cincinnati. I thought that was a really funny show. In this one, a senior citizens protest rocks the station over its new rock and roll format. starring Gary Sandy, Gordon Jump, Lonnie Anderson, and Howard Hessman. And then there's a show called People. I don't know what that was. It says, what's Carol O'Connor up to after hours? How does Christy McNichol get her laughs? Will outrageous Bette Midler get away with her latest outrage? Find out tonight when People reveals these and other sensational stories from Phyllis George. I don't know if I ever watched that. It sounds like something I would have watched. You're also going to have an opportunity to watch The Muppet Show, always great. In this one, Roy Clark teams up with the one and only Muppet Jug Band. And then, well, I know what I'm watching. Welcome Back, Kotter is on. What's going on at Vinny's new bachelor pad? Let's say it all together. Do you know who played Vinny? Barbarino? John Travolta. So the welcome mat says girls only, but the sweat hogs keep showing up. Welcome Back, Kotter. And then there's a show called Operation Petticoat that I don't think I ever watched, but it looks like Randolph Mantooth is in it, who I thought was very cute. And you know what else is on? I'm sure my parents would have wanted to watch this. Verdi's Otello, live from the Met. I just thought it was Othello. It's missing an H here, Otello. So it's with John Vickers. I don't know who he is. I don't know any of these opera singers, but my mom would have for sure wanted to watch this because she loves opera. Loves. I'm sure she still loves it up in heaven. Oh, and we still have MASH in first run. So let's see who's in the cast now. Oh, it's already Harry Morgan. So McLean Stevenson has already left. So pushed to the brink by a breakdown in the peace talks, Hawkeye, of course played by Alan Alda, acts on his own to stop the war. I remember that episode. That was a very poignant episode. Monday Night Football is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Chicago Bears. For sure my parents would have wanted to watch that. So I don't know how television sorted out that night in our home between the opera and the Bears playing on Monday Night Football and MASH and no VCR. There were some hard choices to be made in the Bleadon household that night. Oh, and Lou Grant was on. I loved Lou Grant. If that still streamed somewhere, I think I would watch it. And so in Lou Grant, Lou Grant's character is now a newspaper editor, like a hardcore newspaper editor. And they took the character from the sitcom of Mary Tyler Moore and put him into this very gritty drama. It was a very interesting transition for the character, but it really worked well, and Ed Asner was fantastic in it. So this is called Lou Grant is the name of the show. If you ever find it somewhere, I recommend it. So this is an episode about medical and journalistic responsibility. It opens with a coincidence. Just after finishing a story of the flow of illegal pills, reporter Joe Rossi, played by Robert Walden, witnesses a teenage girl collapse from an overdose. Okay, this sounds sad. So it's about drugs. But I'm sure it's also a brilliant episode. Maybe I'll look it up. Maybe it's streaming somewhere and I can watch an episode or two. And then as we get into late night, we have syndicated stuff such as The Rockford Files or The Honeymooners. Or on Johnny Carson, the guest host is Steve Martin, and the guests are Cheryl Ladd and Steve Landisberg. So lots of things that you can watch. And this is going to bring us to Tuesday morning. And we're also at the end of this episode. So guess what? We are absolutely going to have a part 2 to this issue of TV Guide. I don't know when I'll record it. Maybe the next episode, or maybe 3 episodes from now, but we will return to it, I promise. So in the meanwhile, I send you on your way with Wishes for the sweetest of dreams and lots of love and goodness and light for you. Thank you so much for keeping me company and letting me keep you company as we take our trip into the Wayback Machine to 1978. I love being able to look back and recapture some of these memories from my life, and perhaps it's helping you recapture some of yours as well. So, my beautiful friends, thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon. I love you, and thank you.